Hi, this is Mr. Wartsky, and today we are going to start our last unit, yay, and that is ecology. So let's get started with this wonderful topic. Now, if you took AP Environmental Science, awesome. You're going to know a lot more about this than you need to. So let's go over the basics. Ecology is the study of the relationship of living things, organisms, and their environment. Now, populations are a group of organisms that are the same species and live in the same geographical area. The population definition should be familiar. We have talked about that before. We are going to focus our attention on the properties of populations. That's what this first part is all about. So the first characteristic is the patterns of population growth. Now, the rate of growth of a population is equal to the increase or decrease of individuals per given unit of time. Either the population increases over a unit of time, or the population will decrease because the number of individuals are leaving the population. Now, with no immigration or emigration, that's people moving in or people moving out, the rate of increase is equal to the birth rate minus the death rate, and it can be either negative or positive. So there is an equation, a differential equation, where R equals population growth. And if population increases at a constant rate, you see an exponential curve. So get these dashes, get rid of the dashes. So dn over dt equals Rn, where n equals the number of individuals present and t equals time. The growth shows an exponential growth. Now this if resources are limitless. But problem is resources aren't limitless. There are limiting factors, and that leads to something known as carrying capacity. So carrying capacity is the given amount of individuals that an environment can support. So the environment can only support so many individuals because of the limited resources. So now we're going to add the variable k to this equation, where k equals carrying capacity. So k is a negative feedback term. So when n right here is really small, that means k is almost 1, and the growth is exponential. Now, as n increases, k will actually decrease. And then what you'll see is the growth stopping, and the population will start to level out. Actually, and this is called a logistic, by the way, and you'll see a picture on the next slide. You probably saw it before. It actually hovers around the carrying capacity. It's not really a straight line. So it goes up above the carrying capacity, then it goes below the carrying capacity, then it goes above, then below, and above and below. So you'll have something that looks like this. This is the exponential growth. But without the carrying capacity, this is with limitless resources. Over here, we have the carrying capacity. That is the number of individuals that the environment can support. So it'll go up exponentially, then it will level off, and it will hover around the carrying capacity. It will go up and down, up and down, up and down, up like that. But this is the average. Logistic. The second property of population is the survivorship patterns. So this is going to be silly, but the mortality affects population size. There are 3 basic survivorship patterns. In type 1 organisms, most organisms die later in life, like us. Most organisms die later in life. Not all, most. Type 2, mortality is the same for all ages, just like Hydra. They're pretty much the same size and height, and they live, it doesn't really matter when they die. Type 3, most organisms die early in life, like the larval stages. So you have all these hundreds of larval little babies that are eating, and then there are food for other things, and very few of those larvae grow up to be adults. Okay? And I think we have a slide about that. Oh, no, we don't have a slide. Sorry. Age structure is the number of individuals of different ages in a population. We see an age distribution. So here's a picture of an age distribution graph. We see that the ages are on the y-axis, usually in groups of 5, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, all the way up to 85. And we have the number of individuals, or the percent of populations, on the x-axis here. And it can show us that In Afghanistan, the majority of individuals, there are a lot of babies are born, and we see a decrease in the population. Perfect pyramid or triangle here. Whereas the United States are actually children right here. They're decreasing our birth rate. This right here is the baby boomers. Little bump here. There's a little bump out here. Millennials. Yeah. And then in Italy, we see no growth because we see all these people here, and there's a decrease in children. So that is the age structure graph. And you'll probably be expected to draw one in class. Density and dispersion. Density is equal to the number of individuals per unit area or volume. Don't forget volume. And dispersion is the pattern of distribution. Now we can have random, clumped, or regular. And here's some right. Random individuals are just randomly dispersed, right? Uniform, and then clumped. Now clump populations are usually around rivers or oceans, port cities, for example. So regulation of population size, how population size regulated? Well, we have density dependent factors that are factors affected by the number of individuals like food, space, water, sunlight, and that they will affect population size. And density independent factors not affected by the number of individuals like weather and natural disasters. So droughts, it doesn't matter how many people are living in an area, but if you have a drought, that will affect the population size. Natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, all those things, tornadoes happen, and it doesn't really matter how many individuals are around. They don't make them happen. What else can affect population size? Well, population cycles, where populations increase and decrease due to natural cycles. For example, the cicadas, the sound of summer. We have 15-year cicadas and 13-year cicadas and 17-year cicadas, and they will peak every 17, 13, or 15 years. That is a regular population cycle. Then we have life history patterns. So some organisms can increase population size much quicker than others. So we have two different types. We have R-select, which are prodigal, or K-select, which are prudent. So R-select, you have many young, they're small, they really mature rapidly, they have little parental care, and they usually reproduce once, the Big Bang. K-select, few young, the size of the young pretty large, they mature slowly, there's an intensive parental care, and usually you can have many kids over a lifetime. Can you guess which one we are? And finally, the asexual advantage, in that organisms that reproduce asexually can increase numbers very quickly, but they have no genetic variation. So if there is a pathogen that will affect one, the pathogen will affect all of them. So remember, when the going gets tough, the tough have sex. The sex provides the genetic variation, which ensures that at least one or very few will survive environmental tragedies or disasters. Disasters is better. So communities, when you grab a bunch of populations, which we just talked about, living in a common habitat, the populations will interact with each other. And how they do that is through competition, predation, or symbiosis. How? Well, if we take a look at the individualistic hypothesis, species happen there by chance, and the area has what the species need, so they stay. So the interactive hypothesis states that assembly of closely linked species will live together. And I don't know what happened with that W. Okay. But we'll focus on the individualistic. This, yeah, not so much. The individualistic hypothesis is what we like. So this the interaction between the same species in competition is called intraspecific competition, or between species is interspecific competition. Right? So if it's been the same species, we're fighting the same species for mates, for food. Interspecies have food usually. So interference competition is face-to-face interactions. We fight, we beat the living crap out of each other. You know, we want that resource, so we're gonna boom, hit each other. Exploitative competition are usually ones for the smaller of the species. They will not win in interference competition, so they will just remove the resource without anyone knowing. They're the sneaky competition, the smart competition. So which one is which? We have the interference and the exploitative. Now, in 1934, Russian biologist J.F. Goss came up with the principle of competitive exclusion, which states that if two species are in competition for the same resource, one species will be better at obtaining the resource, and this species will eliminate the other species from the area. Kind of like natural selection if you think about it. Now, the ecological niche comes out of this competitive exclusion principle, and the ecological niche is the role a species plays in the community. Now, each species in a community will have a different niche. That's how come they can live in the same community. So when people ask you what is going to be your niche, that is basically what is your role in society. Now, if two similar species live in the same area, they will have different niches if you take a look at the competitive exclusion hypothesis or principle. They might appear to compete, but their resources will be slightly different due to the competitive exclusion. Right? So they don't fight each other all the time for the food. They eat different food. They live in different areas. If a new species enters, there might be competition, and one species will either have to leave the area or be killed off due to the competitive exclusion principle. So here's an example. We have a number of different species of birds living within the same tree, but they all live within the same area of the same tree, same type of tree, same species of tree. So they have a different niche. The second type of uh, The second type of interaction is called predation. Sorry. Predation is the eating of live or freshly killed organisms. Predators need hunting techniques or foraging strategies, and these are under heavy selective pressures because if they cannot eat, they will die. Prey, organisms that are to be eaten, need to avoid predators, which also under heavy selective pressure because if they are eaten, they die. So reproductive success is dependent upon living, which sounds so silly, but it's so true. It is basically an arms race. Prey often escape from predators without engaging in combat. Some run, some hide, some have camouflage. So prey really don't want to have to fight the predators. Now, for many populations, predation is the main cause of death. Now, most predators prey on more than one species, and the availability of prey is the major determinant of carrying capacity of a predator population. Remember, if you need to, hit pause to get the information down. Now, when the prey population increases, the predators have lots of food and they can reproduce. When there are a lot of predators, the prey get eaten and the numbers decrease. When the prey decreases, the predators run out of food and they will die or move to a different area. Their numbers decrease. When the predator's numbers go down, the prey can reproduce and have more offspring. So this is like a cycle. And here is a graph of the cycle. Now, the first population to increase or decrease will be the prey population. So as the prey population numbers are high, we see an increase in the predators. When they see an increase in predators, the population drops down. When the population drops down, the predators drop down. When the predators drop down, the prey increases. Up and down, in and out. So these two population cycles are linked. Now, that is it for today. We'll pick this up in the next screencast. I hope you have a great night.